The mid-morning mix and mingle. Weekdays, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Welcome to Drivetime Exchange. As rubber hits the road, hard talk meets great music. Monday to Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. on Net Radio, taking you above and beyond.
A party, a Caribbean party, the entire region together in one big splashdown fiesta.
A Caribbean connection, a regional vibration.
I say we jamming to the songs of the Caribbean, we grooving to calypso and steel band. This jam go be Irie. It's one love. So
all right, everybody. So good afternoon to you, and welcome. Good to have you here on New Era TT Radio, the heartbeat of the Caribbean. We're glad to be here with you on this Monday. Yeah, it's a Monday afternoon, and of course, we welcome everybody to the Drive Time Exchange. Of course, on a Monday and a Tuesday, Tony Fraser joins us in between here, and it's always a pleasure to have Tony on the inside. So, Tony, good afternoon to you. How are you doing?
I am good, Charlo, and how are you?
I am well. Yeah, pretty okay for the while.
We had a good weekend. In my part of the world today, it's been sunshine without rain. We could do with you get accustomed to the rain. You could do with a little cooling down, but today has been all sunshine and no rain. That's as I said, in the northeastern part of the country, of the city. I am located, and things are fine outside. I can look out my window, and it's all nice and bright outside. What about you? What's it like in your part of the world?
Yeah, well, up on my side and going up further up in the east, because I am like halfway up that. I'm in Tenapuna, Colorado area, and we had some mixed conditions. We had some rain and some very heavy rain at that too, and then the sun came out, and it's back out again. But I understand even places all the way up to Arima, they were getting some nice showers and stuff throughout the day, but nothing to say flooding and stuff, but just nice rain.
Sometimes we complain about the weather conditions, but we are still blessed in this part of the world. We have sunshine most of the times. We have rain to help the farmers grow the food, keep the city clean, and all of that. Wonderful things to have. Yeah?
That's so true. We have to be thankful, for what we have. We don't recognize it enough.
And as your opening calypso piece there by the great merchant, it's what he says. It's a jam down together.
Yes, a Caribbean connection.
Caribbean connection. There was, incidentally, I don't know if you looked at it, a Caribbean connection last night. It feel in Guyana.
Yes, a good feel for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, the Guyana Amazon Warriors versus the the Trinbago Night Riders.
Yes.
TKR. Quite a contest. It was a low-scoring game, relatively speaking. Not high numbers. What was it? The Guyanese made 100 and 33, 34, something like that. And Trinidad, the TKR, accomplished it with, I think, 17 or 12 balls, something like that, left. And it was quite a tussle at that point in time. But big fellas like Pollard came in and struck some big sixes and Karen Pollard, and all was well after that. And then I think he's an underrated batter, but Akil Hossain did very well. In fact, he sealed the game with a 6 and a 4 in the last over. So it was all
he
good.
He brought in some excitement for the fans.
Yes. Of course, there was a little bit of rancor after Pollard complained about the booing from the stands, but it's a little bit sad to see Caribbean countries, Caribbean nations, cricket playing nations who play together as the West Indies, getting that kind of difficulty in the situation.
Yeah,
but
from people right here at home.
Yeah. It doesn't go down nice little pecan who is curry chicken and who is chicken curry and so on, makes the thing exciting and colorful.
Yes,
but when you're going to some difficult situations, kind of bad.
Yeah, but I guess over the last few days, sport has been great for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah. Glad for reminding me. Yes,
sport have lifted us well.
Yeah. Go ahead, tell our listeners and viewers who haven't heard about it so far.
I know you are the real sports. But I just look at one in the sense that that sports does for us what politicians can't.
Yes, absolutely. It was. It was a great happening there with our two athletes, Walcott and Richards, the Dream Richards, in the 400 meters, who has done well. He started off as a 200 meter man, and he has grown into a solid 400 meter man. I don't remember the exact figures, but his timing was something like 48 something, which is a record, a Trinidad and Tobago record, and he earned a silver medal. A young man who puts his all on the line for the country. And of course, Walcott, and the wonderful things, the great thing about the resilience of Walcott is that, remember, he won his first Olympic medal in 2012.
Yes.
That is 13 years ago.
It's a long time.
For an athlete to keep in the top bracket for 13 years. That's a lot of courage.
Yes, it's a lot of courage, a lot of discipline. And even with Jareem, because he spoke about that, times when they felt, look, I didn't think I would that, because you're just going to games, you're not coming back, you're not medaling. You're always right there, but you're not actually coming back with the substance that people want. So I guess that is a great mental challenge and barrier for a lot of athletes to climb over.
Yeah. I consider him the greatest track athlete that this country has ever had. When you think about the accomplishments, 1 gold, 1 bronze at the Olympics, and now a World Championship gold. That's very significant. And of course, he won CAC medals, gold and silver, and Pan Am Games medals also. So that I would think he's the greatest track sportsman, track and field sportsman. His event is in the field. The country has had. He sits right along all of the others, and in fact ahead of the others. We know about Hazley Crawford. The first gold, he will always be recognized as the first gold medalist for Trinidad and Tobago at the Olympic medals. But sometimes we forget, Chalo, back in the 1940s, we had a man winning silver medal and bronze medal. The great a man who was a weightlifter in that period, and we forget about that. We go along thinking that everything was born in the last 60s or 70s. Of course, we had great athletes in the 70s, the Wendell Motleys, the Edwin Roberts, and so on. But we've done well for ourselves.
Yes.
I suppose the country will award the two gentlemen now, and my hope is that beyond the awards, they are brought into the country under specialist programs to develop the young.
Yeah, I think that is what we need a lot of specialist programs.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I looked at at that final throw that Keyshawn took,
Yeah.
and he, normally the kind of stress and strain and follow through that you see going with a throw.
Mhm.
This particular throw that he was relatively comfortable making that throw.
Yeah.
And
It's a fact, Chalo, that you made a very important observation. If you're too tense and too wound up, the muscles tighten and you're not able to do as well as you should.
right.
And so you're right. The observation that you made of him being relaxed and so on, it freed up the muscles to do the work that was required.
Yeah. But of course,
So-
he said that he's all in praise for his new coach that he got, the German coach that came in. Not even too long ago. That's 2024 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I suppose changing techniques and doing different things at that point in time would probably have paid off at that in that time,
Yeah.
But interesting. I was reading something about the coach, and he said it was kind of painful for him also because one of the other persons that he used to train was also there.
Okay.
And I think that the Japanese guy or whatever it is, but he was also in the competition also, and he used to be the trainer of that guy. And when he was the trainer of the guy was winning medals. Huh?
Yes, so obviously, he's a big coach.
He's a big coach, and he said what was interesting is that he saw him struggling. He saw him struggling to make the thing. So whatever it is that he was doing, and probably knew the capabilities of the individual now. So he said it was painful for him to watch that.
Just to go back a little bit, I just realized, Charles, that I didn't call the name of the first Olympic medalists that we had, the silver and the bronze. Weightlifter Rodney Wilkes, out of San Fernando. I'm sure you've heard of him before.
Yes, I've heard of him.
And he
I didn't know he was a weightlifter.
Weightlifter in the lightweight division. Small fella, a tiny bum. He won. Can you imagine that he won the medal in the 1940s in the Olympic Games? Somebody from Trinidad and Tobago. We weren't even a nation just yet. We were still under colonial rule. And this man called Rodney Wilkes could come and earn a silver. And in the following Olympics, he won a bronze. So that was quite a feat.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's amongst our greatest sportsmen or athletes who have done well in international competition. We can't forget the Wendell Motleys, the 4x4 team, the 100 meters. Of course, Hazley Crawford, the first man who brought home the gold medal for Trinidad and Tobago, and quite a number of others who have done very well over the years.
One of our I would think I hear people are now kind of between Jerame and even Sean, they're looking at him, but don't forget Atto Bolden.
Absolutely, yeah.
A well accomplished athlete also.
I think he has won the highest number of medals at international games, including the Olympics. I think from memory, I think he won 2, a silver and a bronze, and then he won 100-meter gold, not at the Olympics, but in the World Championships. Yeah. And he won something else. So he has done very well over the years. Sometimes we don't have to say who is better than who. We
Yeah,
love
just
all
have
of
to
them.
appreciate what they
Love
have
all of
done
them.
for us.
Yeah. All right, Sir Charles, we are engaged in a little bit of chatter there um, to recognize the accomplishment of the two great athletes, but also because we have a little bit more time this week. Chalo, I wanted to, and I am going to take up this whole issue of, what the Americans, what President Trump has talked about Venezuela as a narco state and part of an international gang and so on and so on, with some heavy laden facts which have come not from some partisan, but really from international relations expert who has been part of what is called the UN World Report on drugs, which is 2025, right up to date on drugs. And I'm going to read from a statement, a couple of statements actually, and you and I can converse along the way. We were supposed to have a couple of guests, but it didn't work out, so we have to do the work ourselves, right, Chalo?
Of course, we will.
Right. So both of us are going to go through this aspect of the claims that, excuse me, the
The
claims
stories
that
that you're reading from is where in the newspapers.
the stories come from the UN World Report
Oh, okay.
and a commentary of the deputy head of that organization some time back. The person is no longer there, but he was at one point in time the deputy head. So let me depart a little bit from the screen and go to something I will read, but everybody will hear my voice. They may not hear, they will not see my wonderful face,
That's all
Charo,
right.
but they will hear what I have to say about the reports. First of all, and everything that I'm quoting from, just to indicate to our listeners, they are not my creations. I didn't write them anywhere. They are from that UN World Report 2025, World Drugs Report of 2025. The first thing is to identify from the report the countries in South America, South and Central America, which are known and which have been researched and found to be, well, I wouldn't say narco states, but states which have been used and continue to be used as a jumping off point for drugs going to the USA and to Europe, and even as far as Africa. And it shouldn't be conceived of, when you hear the countries, you will understand that the passage, and if you know the geography of the Caribbean Sea and the Caribbean area, you will know that Trinidad and Tobago is not on the route to those from South America right up to the United States, and as I said, to Europe and Africa. The countries involved are Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, and Spain, Brazil, Colombia, I think I called Colombia already, and Mexico, Panama, Peru, Ecuador, and Guatemala. And if for people who can turn to a map, or the map of your mind, and if you know South America, those countries go northwards. They don't come into the Caribbean Sea, as it were. They go northwards through places like Mexico and Panama and Ecuador, Guatemala. All of those are Central American countries. Peru is South America, and the material comes from there and goes northwards to the United States. Another stream is to go the other way. Rather than going west, they go east, and you talk about African countries and so on. The drugs are coming from. So the UN document, and I'm going to read a quotation now, and when I'm finished, we can chat about it, Sir Charles. From the document, it says, the main cocaine trafficking flows continue to be from the Andean countries. Those Andean countries are Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. And the traffic goes to North America from the Andean countries to Europe, after either directly or to a lesser extent by way of West and Central Africa. Flows of cocaine to Europe have increased dramatically in recent years, which is reflected both in rising seizures and increasing cocaine consumption, as indicated by the wastewater analysis in European societies. So that's a passage, if you like, Charlo. I don't know if anything comes to you because of that way that the traffic flows.
Well, I'm not too familiar with the geological placement,
the geography of the area,
of those places, so I can't just pull them together, and say much really about it. But I will follow your lead.
Right. Okay. So for our listeners, unfortunately, I don't have a map here. But if you know South America, South America goes from Mexico, which is just below California, and that spine of countries, which include Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, and El Salvador, etc. And it comes down to the top of South America, where you have countries like Colombia and Ecuador and a number of other countries. So if you think about it, it's a straight line from South America, where you get Peru and Bolivia and other South American countries. It's a straight line going north from the south, from the hemisphere of the south, going to Mexico and going through that strait to the United States. And instead, on the other hand, the traffic goes to further west. The globe is round, and if you go further west, then you come upon the rest, the Pacific, and then the Atlantic Ocean, and Africa, and those countries. So the drug trade is situated in that area. It is not coming through in a central kind of way through the Caribbean. So that should give all our listeners an appreciation of the trade and where it is going. Of course, and the figures, I will read from the figures in a moment. Some of it comes into the Caribbean, but it's a tiny figure. And let me do guess. Let me read what the documents say.
But before you go forward, Tony, even
Sure.
Talking about the areas, does the report actually talk more about the Caribbean? Is it more about like trafficking routes, or about like local consumption of drugs?
Yeah, it talks about the Caribbean as indicated. Some of the drugs, a very small portion of the drugs. I think I have a figure somewhere there which will make it clearer. A small portion of the drugs come into the Caribbean, and undoubtedly come into, let me see if I could find the figures here, come into Trinidad and Tobago and other parts of the Caribbean. Let me look quickly and see if I get those figures. No, they're not in this part of the document. Maybe the other document has them.
Or maybe as we go along, we'll pick it up.
Yeah. But to answer your question, some of it goes through the Caribbean, goes up to Jamaica. Some of it must come across to Trinidad and Tobago, because it's known that we have a drug problem in the region. But logic will tell you that we have 8 million people in the Caribbean Sea, meaning the English-speaking Caribbean. We have 350 million in South America, in the USA. What's the population of Canada? Something like 50 million plus. And across in Europe, you have hundreds of millions of people. So if you are a drug dealer, where is going to be your market? The Caribbean, or where the large groups of population are? And therefore, it is just logical. What I can say is, I'm going to read it rather than trying to remember the figures. So that's a general picture painted by the UN. It's called the UN World Drugs Report of 2025, and so that is not from me. That is from what the experts have researched and written about. Anything you want to add there or ask about it, Charlo?
No, I think you basically covered it, because as you said, whatever use is taking place in the Caribbean, it seems to be minimal compared to to wherever it's going, because I'm wondering from some of the reports if it's that, well, I know we are not really producers, so it's probably just trafficking, transiting, and as you said, a small amount of consumption.
Yeah. And in terms of the notion that the Caribbean can be a transport route, according to the World Report, Venezuela into the Caribbean is not even mentioned. Venezuela is not a transshipment point for the drugs. But I will read that rather than making it sound as if that is my opinion. And we're going to get to that in a moment. So let me go back to reading some of the documentation and what it says regarding drug trafficking. So it's talking here about cocaine seizures reported in Western and Central Europe in 2023, and those exceeded those reported in North America for the fifth year in a row. So what that says is that America is no longer the dramatically outstanding destination for the drugs, because Western and Central Europe in 2023 exceeded those reported in North America for the fifth year in a row. So this is not happening yesterday and tomorrow. It's been happening for a long point in time. 98% of the global total of such seizures, and that is going into Western and Central Europe. However, the increase in cocaine seizures in the emerging markets for the drugs and on its transshipment routes through Africa and Asia was far sharper, rising by 85% from this previous year. Let me explain the geography a little bit. I'm sure that everybody knows the map of the world, and you have the map of the hemisphere. Starting far north in Alaska, Greenland, etc., coming right down to the south. On the eastern side of this hemisphere, you have a small part in the Caribbean, and then you have Europe. But on the western side, going further west, you go back around the world. Remembering, of course, as Columbus discovered, that the world was round. So if you go too far, you're not going to fall off the edge. So you're coming back to Africa. And this is the point that is being made, that the transshipment point goes through Europe, Africa, and I presume it's spread to the rest of the world, Asia, and those countries from there. Yeah, so that's a little bit of a geography overview, Sir Charles. Any questions on that?
Not really. I'm just wondering from the fact that you mentioned that Venezuela is not identified as one of those producers of cocaine, and I suppose then the question being asked then, why all this build up in the Caribbean?
Yeah, yeah. That's the question at the core of what we're going to talk about, and I will read from another source that to answer your question. That's the exact question to be answered. Why? Why is America making a big deal about and attempting to cite Venezuela as a transshipment point? Incidentally, Venezuela is not a producer of cocaine. It may be a transshipment point as indicated for a small amount of drugs, but it doesn't produce those drugs. As we indicated before, you're talking about Colombia and Peru and Ecuador and those countries are part of the Andean group of countries. The Andean group of countries consist of those countries that I just called out there. Venezuela is not a member of the Andean group. Used to be many, many years ago, but it is not part of the Andean group. So the focus is on the Andean group. Now, let me read parts of it's a fairly long report. I won't read all of it one time, but I'll read it in bits and pieces so that our listeners and yourself, Charlo, can talk about it and ask questions about it. Now, this was a newspaper report in last week, Thursday's Trinidad Guardian. And the title is The Great Hoax Against Venezuela. Oil geopolitics disguised as war on drugs. That subheading is important. It says what we are talking here about is oil geopolitics disguised as war on drugs. Very clear. And it's written by a man called Pino Alaki. He was during, and I'm reading now, during my time as head of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, I frequently traveled to Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, and Brazil, but never to Venezuela. He says there was simply no need to do so. Remember, this was the head of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And he's saying that part of his duty was to go to all of these countries that were producing and shipping the drugs. And he never went to Venezuela because there was no need to.
Right.
And he goes along. The Venezuelan government's collaboration in the fight against drug trafficking was amongst the best in South America, rivaled only by Cuba's impeccable record. This makes Trump's narrative of a narco state in Venezuela sound like geopolitically motivated slander. The 2025 World Drug Report tells a story that is the opposite of the narrative peddled by the Trump administration. Piece by piece, the report dismantles the geopolitical lie built around the cartel de los Solis, an entity as mythical as the Loch Ness Monster. Everybody should know about the Loch Ness Monster, a creature who's supposed to come from the deep wells of Scotland, appear every 200 years or however long, and what Mr. Alaki is saying is that fiction, pure fiction. The 2025 World Drug Report tells a story that is opposite of the narrative peddled by the Trump administration. Piece by piece, the report dismantles the geopolitical lie built around the cartel de los Solis, an entity as mythical as the Loch Ness Monster, but which is useful for justifying sanctions, blockades, and threats of military intervention against a country which incidentally sits on one of the planet's largest oil reserves. What does that strike you as saying, Sir Charles?
I'm not sure exactly what to make of it.
Uh,
Yeah.
so what the author is saying is that this whole thing about this great gang that Trump and his people talk about is pure fiction.
Right.
Such a gang does not exist. And as we heard, the peddling of drugs through the area simply does not happen on the scale that could cause any real significant difficulty in the United States. What is not said is that if the Trump government really wants to go after the drug pushers, they should deal with these countries:
Right.
Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, the Andean group and Mexico, of course. So therefore, um, according to the author, if the real reason is not to deal with narco trafficking, then what else is? There must be some kind of logic inside here. Because as you would know, and our listeners and viewers would know, is that the American government, the Trump government, has put a $50 million load on the head of President Maduro. If you catch him, you get $50 million. For what reason? For what reason? If you really want to catch drug dealers and drug producers, go and deal with those countries. And as the author says, he reminds that Venezuela is not Trinidad and Tobago or some country with 25 cent hydrocarbon resources. It has the greatest source, the largest source of hydrocarbons anywhere in the world. So if you can capture that country, or if you can install a government in that country, now these are my words, this is not what the man has said. He has simply said that the argument about Venezuela being a drug cartel and a helper of the drug dealers and traffickers and so on is not true. It is simply not true. Yeah? Let me go. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, I think definitely something else is at play. That kind of build-up that we see taking place in the Southern Caribbean, for what they are saying, it is cannot be that. I don't think it would need that kind of super strength in the Caribbean. It's like an overkill. How long can the US afford to stay out there like that with the kind of machinery that they have outside there, and not reveal their true intentions?
It's a mama guy.
Everybody's talking about going after Venezuela to get their oil and their natural resources, right? Even the Venezuelan vice president, she mentioned that also when she was linking Trinidad and Tobago to that to what was taking place. So everybody's seeing a bigger picture. The Americans are not giving us that bigger picture. They are saying one thing, but how long and how much longer?
Well, it's interesting. But when one thing to note about all of this, Charles, is that when you have the power, you can do what you choose to do, and nobody can tell you anything, because you have the weaponry, you have the army, you have everything to support what you're doing, and nobody dares to intervene in your country to say differently. All right, so the report continues with the headline, Marginal Country in Global Drug Trade. The 2025 UN report is crystal clear and should embarrass those who have demonized Venezuela through rhetoric. Our Prime Minister should take note of that statement. The report only briefly mentions Venezuela, stating that a small amount of Colombian drug production passes through the country en route to the United States, and to Europe. According to the UN, Venezuela has consolidated its status as a territory free from the cultivation of coca leaves, cannabis, and similar crops, as well as from the presence of international criminal cartels. Now, this is important. If, in other words, this is saying if Venezuela could have been charged for doing that some time ago, during the period of the recent, 10, 15, from Chavez and now Maduro, that is not so. They have cleared up the trade through their country. Remembering also that the indication is that Venezuela does not produce the cocaine and the other kinds of drugs. Its territory used to be used previously as a transport area going north. So that does not happen in any significant way. And the document reveals, I'm reading now, merely confirms the findings of the previous 30 annual reports, which did not address Venezuelan drug trafficking because it does not exist. Only 5% of Colombian drugs transit through Venezuela. For context, and these are the figures that I talked about earlier. For the context, in 2018, while 210 tons of cocaine passed through Venezuela, Colombia produced or traded as much as 2,370 tons. So make the comparison. 210 tons of cocaine passing through Venezuela, remembering, of course, they don't produce it. The country is just used as a route, and that does not mean that the government is in league with the drug traffickers. It means that, like in Trinidad, you cannot say that the government in Trinidad and Tobago are part of the drug gangs, although the politicians blame each other for that. But the truth is, in fact, is that these drug dealers exist outside of the government. So that 210 tons of cocaine passed through Venezuela. Colombia produced or traded as much as 2,370 tons, 10 times more. And Guatemala, which is in Central America, traded 1,400 tons. Yes, you read right. Guatemala is a drug corridor, even 7 times more important than the Bolivarian narco state allegedly is. However, no one talks about this because Guatemala has historically accounted for only a tiny share of the global total of 0.01% of the drugs that of interest to Trump. The report continues to talk about what it's called the mythical cartel de los soles. The American president and the other spokespersons for the US have talked about this drug cartel which exists in Venezuela. And the report says that that is a pure myth. It's a product of Trump's imagination. It's allegedly led by the Venezuelan president. However, it is not mentioned in the report from the world's leading anti-drug agency or any other anti-crime agency, whether European or otherwise. Not even a footnote includes all of these allegations that the Trump government has leveled against Maduro and Venezuela. This deafening silence should make anyone with a shred of critical sense reflect. How can an organized crime group powerful enough to warrant a US $50 million bounty be completely ignored by all the agencies involved in the anti-drug efforts? So what this is saying is that if this were really so that Venezuela was this drug route to the North America and to Europe, then all of the anti-UN drug agencies who research this kind of thing are completely silent. There is nothing to be mentioned in the document. And I've read a certain significant part of the document. Venezuela is not mentioned in the drug report in that section, period. So a lot of fabrication has gone on. And as the report notes, um, if Maduro is this great, drug dealer, uh, you could put $50 million on his head.
Yeah.
But if he's not, what are you putting $50 million on his head for?
Yeah, that is is a kind of confusing part of the picture, and that is why everybody is saying that that it is ready to get into Venezuela. You know, but I was kind of looking at what I feel of what I don't know if it's feel that kind of way, but I was wondering if the strategy is right. If the US, for example, comes down hard on the Southern Caribbean corridor, Venezuela, Trinidad, Guyana, um, traffickers will almost certainly look for alternatives. Not so, Tony?
Yeah.
Because trafficking don't stop, right? They just look for alternatives. And I am already hearing that even to get certain drugs in Trinidad and Tobago right now, it's already starting to get difficult. Marijuana has gone up and all those different kinds of things. So if they make it difficult for a particular route for people to move through and start to force the traffickers through other routes where they may have more control and laws and whatever it is that they need to put in place, I am wondering if that also could be a strategy.
It could be, no doubt, but the big point that is being made here is that it is simply not true that Venezuela is this major exporter of drugs to the US. And as indicated by the figures, you have to look to South American countries, Ecuador, Central America, Guatemala, Mexico, Panama, and down in South America, the likes of Brazil and those countries that are part of the whole Andean group, to look for the drug dealers and the drug traffickers. Not Venezuela. It is not mentioned in it. And I read the relevant part of the report, and Venezuela does not come up for mention, period.
Yeah.
So, according to the former chief of this UN organization that researches the drug dealings all around the world, in other words, he says, what is marketed as a super cartel worthy of a Netflix show is actually a collection of small local networks, the kind of petty crime found in any country, including the United States of America, where nearly 100,000 people die each year from the opioid overdoses unrelated to Venezuela, but all to do with American big pharma. He touches on another point here. Charlo, I don't know if you followed this, but the overdoses, the opioids, which are drugs that people are hooked on. They make you feel good. They are sold as a relief from a headache or a footache or whatever else, in the normal kind of ways that typical kinds of what are the brands now? Cafanol and this and that. Not familiar with it. But they're called opioids and they are addictive. And Venezuela has nothing to do with these drugs. So
Right.
they're looking in the wrong place.
Yes.
So the report continues with a subheadline which says, Ecuador, a real hub no one wants to see. While Washington raises the specter of Venezuela, the real drug trafficking hubs are thriving almost undisturbed. For example, in Ecuador, 57% of banana containers leaving Guayaquil and arriving in Antwerp, that's in Belgium, are loaded with cocaine. European authorities seized 13 tons of cocaine on a Spanish ship coming from Ecuadorian ports, which are controlled by companies that are protected by Ecuadorian government officials. The European Union produced a detailed report on Guayaquil's ports, documenting how Colombian, Mexican, and Albanian mafia groups all operate extensively in Ecuador. I spent some time in Ecuador 15, 20 years ago. Even then, it was a quite militarized country, and it continues to be so. And what the report is indicating, if you want to look for drug traffickers and producers, go to countries like Ecuador. It does not happen in Venezuela. And it also comes back to the point, if it is not the drugs that are said to be passing through Venezuela, then what is it? Why pick on Venezuela and President Maduro? There must be some other reason, as suggested by the report.
Well, either that or the US has some sort of information that the UN drug report and their affiliates don't have.
I don't. I don't. The European report, the UN report is calculated and put together by experts working in those countries and knowing about the drug trafficking and so on. America doesn't do that kind of research. It doesn't even do the research in its own country, but that's another story. Ecuador's continuing with the report. Ecuador's homicide rate has soared from 7.8 persons per 100,000 inhabitants, and that was in 2020, to 45.7 in 2023. So it moved, let's deal with the whole figures. It moved from approximately 8 per 100,000 in 2020 to 46 in 2023. Yet Ecuador is rarely, R-A-R-E-L-Y, mentioned, as it's perhaps because Ecuador produces only 0.5% of the world's oil, and its government does not challenge the US stranglehold on Latin America. Charlo, I think that's a very important point.
Yeah.
What is being said here? Here you have Ecuador, a country that is awash with drug dealing and drug transporting to the US and to other places, and that has moved from 7.8, or let's say 8 per 100,000 inhabitants in 2020 to 46 in 2023.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yet Ecuador is rarely mentioned. It is only perhaps because Ecuador produces only 0.5% of the world's oil and gas, and its government does not challenge the stranglehold of the US stranglehold of Latin America. So in other words, the Americans, they care about Ecuador. Ecuador is no challenge to them. There are no oil that they can get from Ecuador of any significance. So let them do what they want to do. So the thing is not only bad. In reality, Charlo, what the report is saying is that the Americans do not really care about their own people.
Yeah, because I mean that is as double standard as it is. Because if they are such major producers and flowing into the US, and you are ignoring them, as a harmless fly or something like that, and going after others who are not doing any kind of numbers close to what they do, that is as big a double standard as they can get.
Yeah, and what they're in fact doing is not seeking to unburden their own citizens from the real drug producers and traffickers. Charlo, let's take a small break here. You can talk about the station, and then we come back to finish this very interesting report carried in the Trinidad.
Okay, no problem. So people stay with us here inside of the Drive Time Exchange.
Wake up with the Net Radio Breakfast Show. Rise and shine with Wendell Stevens and Richard Ragovarsing, weekdays from 6 o'clock to 9 a.m. Start your day feeling good, energized, and informed as we tackle the biggest issues of the day, get you where you need to be on time, and keep you in the know about everything that matters. We bring you insightful discussions, expert analysis, and the latest updates so you're always ahead of the curve. Mornings matter. Your voice matters. And it all starts right here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio. The Net Radio Breakfast Show, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Wake up informed and stay ahead.
S&H Rumbox, 137 Western Main Road, St. James, for all your retail and wholesale needs for alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Call us at 686-0599 or visit us at 137 Western Main Road, St. James. S&H Rumbox, drinking out of the box.
Don't miss Furniture Plus Inventory Blowout Sale. Get up to 65% off in-store and online. Enjoy massive savings on furniture, appliances, and more. Hurry, this deal won't last. Shop now and save big at Furniture Plus.
Join me, Brother David Muhammad, every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio, Powerful Radio. Join me to hear knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
All right, so we are back inside of your Drive Time Exchange on the Era TT Radio, Net Radio. And of course, we just was inside of the second hour. Tony Fraser is our host in between here. And people, yeah, you can get us at newerattradio.com. We stream all day, every day. So you can get us on New Era TT Radio, also on TuneIn. So with that, you'll be able to get us on your Alexa and Google devices, all right? And of course, we are here on Facebook, we're here on YouTube. And if you'd like to do any advertising with us, you can give us a call, right? 299-5156, or you can just call us at 281-1315 also. And speaking of that, to those of you who are listening to the show, if you would like to join in on the conversations that we are having, if you have an opinion, or you would like to share any of your thoughts with Tony, you can do so, right? So we can entertain you. Give us a call at 281-1315.
Yeah.
Hi, Tony. So we are back inside as we go through that report.
But the information is really important. And, you know, one of the things that it does, getting this information, real information, not movie land, propagandistic talk about blowing ships out of the water and all of that. What this really does is to give you a sense of the ability to make a determination on your own. We are not telling you to listen to what this man has written about the situation, but the facts and figures that the UN has given, so should be very important elements of making a determination about the right and wrong. And also, Chalo, how Trinidad and Tobago has lodged itself in the middle of this thing, without any sense of, you know, what is the real story.
Well, I think Trinidad and Tobago, just like the like why people are wondering and trying to get the main reason for the US being out there. I think they are probably wondering the same thing about Trinidad and Tobago, as to why we are so closely linked to what is taking place. And now we see that the Venezuelans are latching on to us now.
Yeah. All right, so continuing with the report, as we indicated before, we are reading from a newspaper article written by someone who was once the head of the UN Drugs Organization, which does all of the research and reporting on the drug addiction and drug trafficking and drug control all over the world. And this part of the report deals with South America, Central America, the North America, Europe, and of course the Caribbean. And the headline to this, a couple paragraphs here that I'm going to read. The headline is The Real Drug Routes, Geography versus Propaganda. So he's saying that all the old talk you hear about the Caribbean Sea and drugs passing through it and so on, he said that is a pure fiction. Remembering, of course, that he does not deny that a small quantity of the drugs pass through the Caribbean, through Venezuela and through the Caribbean. He's not denying that, but he says it's a very small portion of the drugs. You have to look for the trade elsewhere: Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Mexico, Guatemala, and those countries where it is going. This part reads, The Real Drug Routes, Geography versus Propaganda. During my time at the UN ODC, that's the UN Office on Drug Controls, one of the most important lessons I learned was that geography does not lie. Drug routes follow a clear logic based on proximity to production centers, ease of transport, the corruption of local authorities, and the presence of established criminal networks. Venezuela fails to meet almost all of those criteria. So in other words, he's saying that these kinds of things that for the drug trade to infest those areas, they do not exist in Venezuela. Colombia produces, listen to this, Colombia produces over 70% of the world's cocaine. Peru and Bolivia cover most of the remaining 30%. The most logical routes for reaching the American and European markets are via the Pacific to Asia, through the Eastern Caribbean towards Europe, and overland through Central America towards the United States. So that's a small portion of it. Geographically, Venezuela is disadvantaged for all three main routes. As it borders the South Atlantic, criminal logistics means that Venezuela plays only a marginal role in the grand theater of international narco trading. I mean, you don't want to clearer than that. The OSE is saying for all of these reasons, Venezuela is really a tiny player in the trade. Look to other countries: Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Mexico. But according to him, they have no oil and no resources that the Americans want, so that you have to find some other reason. Regime change. One of our foreign experts, foreign officials in this area, has talked about regime change in Venezuela. What does regime change do? It puts a friendly government, a government friendly to the United States, in office, in control of all of the hydrocarbon resources in Venezuela, which is supposed to have the largest resource of hydrocarbons anywhere in the world, even more than the Middle East and the Arabs. Venezuela is a place you want that. To continue, this sub-headline is Cuba, the embarrassing example. Geography does not lie, but politics can override it. Even today, Cuba represents the gold standards of anti-drug cooperation in the Caribbean. Although it is an island not far from the coast of Florida, a theoretically perfect base overland for drugs to pass through. I have repeatedly observed the DEA, that's the Drug Enforcement Agency of America, and FBI agents admiring the Cuban communists' rigorous anti-drug policies. Chavista in Venezuela has consistently followed the Cuban model in the fight against drugs, inaugurated by Fidel Castro himself, involving the international cooperation, territorial control, and the repression of criminal activities. Neither Venezuela nor Cuba has ever had large areas of land cultivated with coca and controlled by organized crime. Yet, this is my conclusion, not what has been written. Yet, those countries have been targeted by the United States. We know that the embargo against Cuba, which goes back to the early 1960s, for all kinds of reasons except reality. The EU has no particular oil interest in Venezuela, but it is interested in combating the drug trafficking that affects its cities. The EU produced its European Drug Report 2025. This document is based on real data, not geopolitical wishful thinking, and does not mention Venezuela even once as a corridor for the international drug trade. Let me reread that, Charlo, so that our listeners can get a good appreciation of what is being said. The EU, that's the European Union, has no particular oil interest in Venezuela, but it is interested in combating the drug trafficking that affects its cities. The EU produced its European Drug Report 2025. This document is based on real data, not geopolitical wishful thinking, and does not mention Venezuela even once as a corridor for the international drug trade. I wonder if, I don't expect that President Trump and his people would be interested in that, but I wonder if our Trinidad government and our experts are noting these kinds of statements, not propagandistic statements, but real statements, which means that Europe not interested in Venezuela as a drug transshipment point, because it is not, as far as the Europeans are concerned. As far as the research goes, it is not. It is the drugs which go through the Pacific on the other side, on the western side of the world, and on the northern side of the world, going up the hemisphere and going west into Europe. That's important. Not Venezuela. Not Venezuela.
You know what is interesting about all of this for me is that is how do we turn, or how does the Caribbean turn this negative, as they see it, into a positive? Because I mean, like, the irony of all of this is that the amount of drugs passing through here might look very small on the global charts. In some cases, probably insignificant. But to the Caribbean islands, to Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, I mean, what that small amount has done and the damage that it is doing to our countries, it's huge, and it's visible.
Yeah.
So while
No doubt about that.
while we look at it and okay, we're saying, okay, so Venezuela is not a major producer, but for we in the Caribbean here, whatever is coming our way over the years have been doing significant damage and destabilizing our communities and our countries. So
No doubt about that.
how can we use this time, or what is happening here, to our benefit? Because right now it doesn't seem like if CARICOM at all is trying to turn this into a benefit for the Caribbean at this point in time, even if it might be temporary or short-lived.
Yeah.
I don't get the feeling that, other than what Trinidad and Tobago is saying, that any of these Caribbean countries are interested in seeing here going, okay, we understand what's going on, but in the meantime, how can that benefit us here to help us with what is taking place in the Caribbean? And I don't get the feeling that any one of them are interested.
Yeah, it's a very important point, but one element of it is to note that the rest of CARICOM, we are kind of wedged in between the powers, the fellows who are the real powers of the earth, when you go to school, long time in primary school, and big fellas fighting, you can't get involved in that, otherwise you get up and beaten and so on. So CARICOM has to strategically place itself without making commitments on one side or the other. And that's one of the dangers that Trinidad and Tobago is doing, is getting involved in all of this. Suppose tomorrow Trump will not be the president of America for the rest of eternity. He will have to go someday, perhaps sooner than later, meaning that his 4-year term will finish in 4 years. And what do we do at that point in time? If a new government comes into office and decides to establish quality relations with Venezuela, but then we have gone outside and exposed ourselves on, the acrimonies that this thing has produced in terms of Venezuelan ministers saying all kinds of nasty things about Trinidad and Tobago. So the question, why do we get ourselves in the middle of that? More so, given all that has been included in this report. It is pure propaganda. It is not reality. Yes, there are drugs coming through the Caribbean, through the Bocas, through Trinidad and Tobago, but it's happening all over the world. And Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, according to the analysis, according to the figures, we are not the major part of it. So hopefully, what the Americans can do, you talk about what can be done, is that if the Americans can give us the kind of power, military power that is required to deal with these traders who are going through the region. And I don't mean them wiping them out of the water completely without any evidence, without any reality and so on, but really dealing with drug traffickers who are coming through the region.
Well, maybe we might be able to get that help if they ask for it, given some of the agreements that we have signed and SOFA arrangements and all those different kinds of things.
Yeah.
It maybe
yes.
That probably it might be one of the things that Trinidad and Tobago could probably look at or for if help is needed.
And you're right, and it is not that Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean do not want the assistance of the United States with its firepower and so on, but it's just poorly directed, and the objective is not about us really. The objective is about what the American president at this point in time requires. As the reporter has made it quite clear, this is not about drugs and all of that. This is about the resources of Venezuela and wanting to control those resources. And if shallow, let's assume if the Americans get hold of the resources of Venezuela in one form or the other, through its multinational corporations, through its policies and programs, however they get control of it, then we will have to dance the tune that the Americans call. If now, as the Trinidad and Tobago government has made an arrangement with Venezuela to refine some of its raw materials, which Venezuelans cannot do for themselves at this point in time, then that might slip away from us, because the Venezuelans have already said that we have been doing wrong things and indicting the Venezuelans on the basis of what the Americans want.
Yeah, I think we have already been doing that dance a long time ago.
Yeah, what the Americans want
Yeah. Trinidad and Tobago has been doing that dance a long time. That dance ain't no start.
Yeah, the only thing there, Charlo, is that remember the Venezuelans signed an agreement with Trinidad and Tobago to bring some of its raw material here for us to process and to export northwards. And therefore, there is benefit there from it. But if we continue to bad talk, then we continue to, in common language, shook Trump and the warships on them. They have memories, and they will make a determination about the role that Trinidad and Tobago played in their country at some point in time. And the point is that it's so totally unnecessary. If the Americans want to invade Venezuela, let them do it. I'm not advocating that they do it, but they don't need our assistance.
Yeah. And then I suppose
propaganda assistance.
And I suppose too also, just as we are proposing, and there could be a regime change in the US in years to come. There could be a regime change also in Trinidad and Tobago in years to come.
Yeah. Now, just to read the last part of this report. Yet Venezuela is systematically demonized, notwithstanding all of the hard evidence to the contrary, to every principle of truth. In his memoir, following his registration, former FBI Director James Comey revealed the unspoken motives behind American policies towards Venezuela. Trump told him that Maduro's government was sitting on a mountain of oil that we have to buy. This is not about drugs, crime, or national security. It's about oil that the US would rather not pay for. It is Donald Trump who deserves an international bounty for the crime of systematic slander against a sovereign state aimed at appropriating its resources. So that's the end of the report. But according to the facts related by the former head of the UN Drugs Department, meaning that the department which does the research on where drugs are coming from and going to and so on, Venezuela is simply not amongst the major traffickers. As indicated, I remember the figures: Colombia 70%, and what's the other country? Guatemala 30% mixed up between those other Central American states. Ecuador is a major trafficking point also, not Venezuela. Yes, so Charlo, that is what I wanted to convey to our viewers and our listeners today. We had a number of invitees out, but for one reason or the other, they couldn't be here with us. But I used the report in the absence of anyone else to indicate the importance. If you like, the man, let me read his name here carefully. Pino Alaki. Pino Alaki is the former head of the UN Drugs Department, the Drugs Research Department, and the information that he quoted, they have come from the 2025 UN World's Drug Report. You cannot want it more direct than that. Those are not my views. Those are not my facts. I am not the researcher in that situation. Those are the pieces of information, the volume of information that has come out of the UN document on world drug trafficking. So, Charles, I don't know what you want to say in this, so ask.
Well, the thing about it, and I saw somebody calling me just now. If you'd like to call back, I'll take your call. Where do we go from here with all of this that is taking place? It is so much uncertainty taking place, lots of speculation, and I don't know that the US is one to just sit idly by with an agenda and not act upon that agenda very shortly. But I have a caller coming in. So let me take the call. Caller, good afternoon to you. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, Sir Charles. Good afternoon, Tony Fraser.
Afternoon to you.
Thank you, Tony, for bringing this report to our attention, the UN document. Sounds very interesting. I am certainly going to try to read up on it and get some more information in terms of, the contents and the findings. I also just wanted to raise a couple of things based on the discussion this afternoon. Firstly, I just want to mention, I think with reference to CARICOM, and we know that there has been no consensus position issued on this, the US buildup in the Southern Caribbean, although I know quite a number of countries have actually mentioned that, of course, they're very concerned about the developments that are taking place. I am of the view that the statement that was issued by the ALBA countries, which include, I think, about 5 CARICOM member states, where they said they actually supported Venezuela quite categorically in their statement. I think that is what has perhaps somehow prevented the arrival of a consensus on the matter, because what you have is you have about 5 countries that are clearly in support of Venezuela, and so to get a more non-aligned position, I think, would be somewhat difficult. But regarding the Mexico and Ecuador,
sorry, before you go on, Kola, let me deal with the first part of your statement. Very well said. The fact is that any group of countries, the European community has broken up several times over the years because of differing positions of member states. And remember, member states have their own focus. For instance, let's take St. Vincent and the Grenadines and a number of countries in the Eastern Caribbean. Remember the oil deals that they got from Chavez back then. They got lots of oil in local parlance on trust, and some of them did not have to pay at all. So you would find that a number of those countries would be, open to Venezuela. And believe in Venezuela and so on. So it's a matter that the point I'm making is that even in such circumstances, what is required is dialogue. Dialogue so that a common position can be arrived at.
Yes.
Just that I wanted to say. You can go ahead.
Okay. The other points which I wanted to raise, actually with reference to Mexico and Ecuador, is that earlier on this month, actually a little over 2 weeks ago, Secretary of State Rubio, in fact, visited both those countries. Now, what I have found particularly interesting in terms of Trump foreign policy in the hemisphere is that he has a Secretary of State who is fluent not just in English, but also in Spanish. And whenever I look at those joint media conferences that he has at the end of his visits, you see him taking questions both in English and in Spanish, and he's responding. And so he is a Secretary of State because of the fact that he's so comfortable in the Spanish language. When he goes to these countries, I think it somehow facilitates his ability to communicate, not just with the government officials, but also with the media in those particular countries. And it also means that he's also quite sensitive to the kinds of nuances that are at play when for another language is being used. So I just think that is an important consideration to bear in mind.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's a very important point. But Kola, I recognize you from you participating in, in previous programs. Can I ask you off the air, when I hand you back to Sir Charles, to give him your name and number so that we can call you at a future point in time, if that's okay with you?
You mean for us to speak off the air?
Yeah, off the air. You don't say it to me now. When Sir Charles hands it back to me, he will talk to you and you will hand it to him.
Okay. Shall I proceed, or because I just wanted to mention?
Chalu will take you off the air.
Yeah, the information I will talk with you about, Kola. But any other thing that you wanted to add to the discussion?
Okay, the other thing I wanted to add to the discussion was that when Mr. Rubio went to both Mexico and Ecuador, the issue of drug trafficking actually came up, and the issue of security cooperation regarding drugs, regarding Ecuador. What it also appears is that the U.S. would like to reopen a base that was closed there by an Ecuadorian government in 2009. So that is also a factor that we have to take into account. In Ecuador, the U.S. also designated 2 cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And so they also said that they're prepared to put financial resources into Ecuador's fight against the cartels. In terms of Mexico, they're looking at also at joint operations against drug, arms, and human trafficking, and so on. But you would also have seen in reports, Tony, that Mexico has also extradited a number of cartel leaders to face justice in the United States. So that there is some cooperation on the part of the Mexican government with the US when it comes to drugs, although the Mexicans are certainly not prepared to allow the US to take action which they deem to be against Mexican sovereignty. So those are just the comments that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Sure. So you just stay on the line and Sir Charles will come to you. He will take you off the air and allow me to chatter and take your information. And thank you once again for participating. All right, Charlo, you're dealing with the lady now. So just to round up the discussion, we've talked quite a lot. We've read from the report, the UN report on drugs in Latin America and the rest of the world also. And we are talking about it in the context too of Trinidad and Tobago's stance, the government of Trinidad and Tobago all-out stance in favor of the Americans, which the experts, not me, the experts have said that, it's a little bit premature, it's a little bit not required. It's going against CARICOM. It is not in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago to take such an open stance in these matters, because you never know what is going to happen. And the Venezuela is not going to disappear from 7 miles offshore of South Trinidad and Tobago, so that we can't, indicate that, throw them into the bamboo, as it were, to be so aggressive towards them, taking the side of the United States.
Tony, one of my callers earlier on one of the programs in mid-morning was actually raising a very interesting point, where because most likely they said they're going to take up residence in just off the north coast there, right? And he was saying, what does that mean for our fishermen? Because he said if we, meaning the government, were in support of how the U.S. executed persons out there as they felt that they were drug traffickers, if that same thing now starts to happen to our fishermen in that area, being blown up because the Venezuelans now believe that you are, because they identify human trafficking, drugs, and that's why they're going to be coming there now, right?
Yep.
So almost the same reasoning like the US, so close to us, and our fishermen start being targeted, not even questioned, but being blown out of the water.
Absolutely.
What is going to be our position? How are we going to say, well, it's okay then?
And you know, our Prime Minister has said to the fishermen is that you're on your own when you go out in the ocean as here, meaning that if the Americans blow you up, well, too bad. We are not coming to your assistance, whatever can be done. We're not making any statement in that regard because if you choose to go outside of Trinidad and Tobago waters, or even within Trinidad and Tobago waters, and you get blown up, that's your problem.
Well, I don't think we could say if you go in Trinidad and Tobago, and if our fishermen are attacked in our waters, I think the government has a responsibility to respond to that sort of situation.
But what is going to say if it has been so entwined in what America does, saying that you have a right to kill them, where are you going to come back from at that point in time?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So fishermen. So fishing is how do you describe fishing from here on in?
It's their livelihood. If they don't fish and they don't catch fish, they don't eat. They can't only eat fish and drink seawater. They have to sell the fish and buy some other elements of food.
Yeah, well,
so it's really going out.
According to the commissioner of police, when you go to fish, go looking for carrot. Don't go and look for contraband.
yeah. And when human beings are human beings, if they are a Venezuelan National Guard, and I'm not saying they will do that, but if humans are humans, if they know that Trinidad and Tobago are so against them, whereas they might turn a blind eye, or they may tell a fisherman, okay, get out of the waters, don't come back here again. They may not be so kindly disposed because they know that you are agreeing to blow their citizens out of the water without a chance to make a case for themselves. All right, Sir Charles, that's it for the time being. We're working on getting a number of trade unions for tomorrow to talk about their aspirations for the budget. And we're going to go to the business community also to get persons, not tomorrow, but on another day, to get their views, because the budget is a big thing now, come October. The date has not been announced, but it's usually say in the last week or so of October. I don't expect it's going to be too much different at this point in time. So, Chalo, that's it. We have gone a long way into the 2 hours, and we leave you at this point in time.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we look forward to see what will happen in the drive time tomorrow. Yeah. All right, this has been the Drive Time Exchange right here on New Era TT Radio. People, stay connected and stay right where you are.
This culture was born. In life's shadowed places, the magic was born. Well, the tribes, they regrouped again, formed their wars on a brand new plane, and through their strife, their manhood was reborn. And so from all this bacchanal, life is now a festival, and you can hear the children sing. Hear them singing. This great song was written for the band man, to all those who shown their dedication.